Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 76th episode this week, where we'll be recapping a Patriots upset win versus the Cincinnati Bengals in their opening game of the 2024 season, as well as previewing this week's home opener versus the Seattle Seahawks. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at @Pats300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary and news of the day. So Kevin, I know both of us picked Bengals to win last week, but we did mention some reasons why the Patriots had a chance of winning. And it seemed right from the get-go that things started to go their way. What was your overall thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think it wasn't terribly surprising. We had mentioned at the last week when we had our last preview episode that it wouldn't be surprising to see if the Patriots pull this off because a couple of reasons. One, they have a lot of familiarity with the Bengals because Alex Van Pelt and a lot of the other staffers have came from that Cleveland team where they've faced the Bengals a lot and have had pretty much a good amount of success against the Bengals. Um, and so is Jacoby Brissett because he played with the Browns a couple years ago. The other one is that the Bengals notoriously get off to a really bad start.
Yep.
The last announced 5 years, so they're now 1-4 in season openers. The only win they've had was in overtime, so it wasn't like it was a clear cut win to go ahead. And they usually start off slow the first four games of the year. Again, not always a bad thing because as Bill would usually take it, is that the first four games is really when you're trying to still learn your team. So as long as you're able to improve and get by after, it's fine. It's not great to shoot yourself in the foot, like to start off like 1-3 or 2-2 or 0-4 if you don't have to, but they don't usually start off too hot. The other thing too is we're not really big fans of. I'm pretty sure you're in the same boat as me with Zach Taylor. I
Yeah.
think he's not as good of a coach as people make him out to be. And I think a lot of it is being bandaged up with Joe Burrow. Although last year they did still do pretty well when Burrow was hurt, so you have to give him credit there. But all those kind of things, and then losing Higgins for the last game, having Jamar Chase not practice the entirety of training camp and go in there with only some small amount of reps going into the game before and not being in game shape that way. They just had a multitude of reasons why they did have a chance to win, and that's why what they did. And give credit to the Patriots and what they did. They had the game plan that they needed to do in this game. It's going to be interesting to see how they go forward from here. Are they going to be as prepared for future games when you don't have 6 months to prepare? And how are they going to look? How is this offense going to look? Are you going to be able to get by just basically kind of being really conservative, relying on your defense? And you look at last year, if they just had someone that didn't turn the ball over, they would have been a completely
I'll
different
Jacoby
team.
Brissett.
Yeah. So if they had someone that didn't turn the ball over, they would have likely been a playoff team or sniffing
Or
the
right
playoffs at
around there.
least.
Yeah.
And if they can do that this year, they may be able to pull off more wins than some people were expecting. It'll just be interesting to see how it continues to look kind of going forward. That's my big kind of takeaways over the game.
Yeah, my big thing was I didn't watch it live because I was out of the country, but rewatching it afterwards, it seemed very similar to last year. Like coaching wise, it seemed like nothing changed, which is a good thing. I
Hmm.
know you and myself both have had a lot of question marks on Gerard Mayo, and through one game, he looked the part. It had a great game plan. Defense looked almost exactly the same. Kind of suffocated the Bengals offense. But I'm interested to see how that progresses going forward. I know the Patriots played the Bengals 2 years ago in 2022, and they pretty much held them on offense as well, or the Patriots defense held the Bengals offense to minimal scoring opportunities. So again, maybe they use the same game plan or they tweak parts of it, which is always a good thing if you have always use things that you have to your advantage. But I'm interested to see how they game plan going forward week to week, especially as other teams see what they're doing both offensively and defensively, and they try to stop them.
Yep. And I think one thing that I was a little surprised that was just the amount. the amount that the Bengals knew that they were going to be running, or they should have known that they would be running, I would have thought they would have put more emphasis on stopping the run there. But credit to the Patriots, and definitely Mondre looked like he did. I'd say probably 2 years ago. He
Yeah.
looked a lot fresher than last year. So I don't know if last year he had like a lingering injury or not. But he looked quicker. He looked stronger, faster. And he looked kind of like the Mondre that we were expecting to see.
Yeah.
Um,
And like you said, the running game with Mondre looked excellent. And
mhm.
as you know, with the quarterback that they have, the wide receivers, if the Patriots are going to do well offensively, it's going to start with the running game. And again, part of the running game is going to rely on the offensive line. And to their credit, they did well. Again, a lot of it's running behind Big Mike and Robinson.
Hmm.
So, but going into the next week, week after, and teams know you're going to be favoring the right side. If they start stacking the right side or the left side of the defense, are they still going to be able to run if defenses are forcing you to run to your left side behind Vidarian Lowe or Chucks or when City So comes back with his injury?
Yep. No, no, agreed. So getting into the line, I think we already talked about Mondre a little bit. It wasn't great. So especially from a pass protection standpoint, he was pretty much all the kind of sources around there have been saying it was about a 50% pressure rate, which is insane.
Yeah,
So that you got to give even more credit to Brissett by
yeah,
how composed he looked, because if you had little bitch Mac Jones back there, he probably would have been either like running around like a chicken with his head cut off, getting sacked right away, or throwing interception, trying to make heroic thing that's not going to happen. Where Brissett took the pressure well. He knew when to escape when he had to, and then didn't make any mistakes. Didn't have any of those boneheaded plays where you're like, "What are you doing?"
yeah,
And handled the pressure well. So that's one thing that we were talking throughout the game, kind of where it's a difference you see between the two teams from last year, where
yeah,
Brissett isn't losing his mind and he's having composure. Whereas last year, if it was Mac Jones being quarterback this year, they would have lost that game. He would have had
yeah,
one or two turnovers and they would have ended up losing. So hopefully Brissett will be able to keep it up with it's again, it's really hard for a quarterback to have that much pressure consistently and not show kind of some weariness out of it.
yeah,
So even Tom Brady, you would see him kind of throwing off his back for a little bit. You didn't see that what happened last year with Mac Jones because he's a much better quarterback.
yeah.
But you do see little things where some passes are affected by it. So it'll be interesting to see with the percent. But give him a bunch of credit. He was able to. He looked um, like he looked kind of, I think, in the beginning of camp when we were out there watching him, and it didn't kind of look like that preseason um, quarterback during those games where you're like, what the hell is he doing? Like this isn't what we signed up for. So,
Yeah.
and then again, the line with the pressure. Uh,
And
ch
one thing too with Brissett in
Mhm,
the preseason too is a lot of times up until the third preseason game, the offensive line had really no tackles. They had
mhm,
Vidarian Lowe and they had Chucks because of when you at the time was at right guard. So again, he that definitely factored into it too in the preseason where again, preseason you can't really tell a ton, but if you're getting pressure from both sides
mhm,
consistently, it's tough to really do much. Again, I know Robinson didn't do great in pass protection. He did good in run protection, run blocking, but pass
mhm,
protection he allowed the most pressures, five out of any of the offensive linemen, and then Chuck's allowed 3 and 6 pass reps. But it's going to be interesting to see how the offensive line, if they're able to solidify going forward, if Robinson, as he learns, if he's able to get better at pass protection, if Low, Chucks, Caden, some semblance, if they're able to help with pass protection on the left side. I know they had Wallace as a sixth offensive lineman at times. If they even do that
mhm,
on, it sucks in the passing game if you have to do that where you have six offensive linemen, but you might have to do that considering what it looked like early on in the game on Sunday.
mhm. No, no, agreed. And then Another thing, just give credit to the coaching staff for. I don't know who's the one that gave the green light to pull Chucks that
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
But credit for them for doing that and realizing this isn't working. We need to change this. And again, Vederen Lowe wasn't great. I think he also allowed five pressures in the game, but it wasn't at an insane rate that Chucks was allowing them at. So
And Chuck's had a PFF score
rating.
of 0.0, which I didn't think was possible.
Yeah, I was originally it was I think a
1.2.
1.0, 1.2, and
Yeah.
then when they rewatched the game to regrade it to if there's anything they missed, they
Yeah.
ended up lowering it to a 0, which is insane.
Yeah.
But I
And
thought that
again,
was
not to his credit, but defend him, he pretty much has only played the right side his entire career in the
hmm
NFL, and even during camp too, for most of camp. So it's a completely different thing to switch to another side. It's one thing if also he was at left side the entire camp, but
hmm
it's a completely different thing for offensive linemen, especially tackles. So again, he didn't play well, but the coaching staff didn't really put him in a great position to succeed.
Agreed, yeah. And then going on to just Brissett, I know we talked about him a little bit. Just one other thing I wanted to add where it's just it's funny that people are like, oh, this team looked great or whatever. This was a great win. But if you really look at it, like they ran the crap out of the ball, and that was great.
Yeah,
Brissett, if you actually look at him, like he didn't play great. Like, he played good enough where he's protecting the ball. There was a bunch of throws that he missed where guys were wide open, or mistargeted them. And he just kind of looks kind of how like I remember like Drew Bledsoe looking like towards the end of his time with the Patriots, where he's very like cumbersome to like move around, and even his throwing motion, everything about him kind of looks slow. Like, um, it's gonna be interesting to see going forward too. The more hits he takes, what is it gonna look like? But he just reminds me of really kind of like Drew Bledsoe towards the end, where he's that like as Ernie said, he looks like he's a wildebeest under attack. So I think you could kind of say that again about Brissett, especially being pressured 50% of the time.
yeah.
And he did sneak out of it a lot, and he did show some elusivity. Is that a word?
Um,
Elusiveness. And he didn't look completely overwhelmed by it, but he just everything about him kind of just looks like it takes work. Like I don't really know how a good way of saying it other than just it looks like it takes a lot of work to get where he's
yeah,
at. So,
agreed.
all right. Moving on defense. Again, they played really well. They kind of continued how they looked last year, and that was something I was really excited for to see
Yeah,
how are they going to look and how is it. We both really like Covington, but again, it's his first time calling plays. How is that going to look? How is the game plan going to look? Who's the one that's actually scheming it? We actually don't really know. Um, I would like to hope that it's probably Mayo being part of it because if it's not, I don't know what he's doing. Uh, but well, whoever it is, it looked like the kind of prototypical kind of Bill Belichick defense.
yep,
And it did make me kind of excited where if it continues this way, then we may actually have something going forward if May is able to develop as a quarterback.
yep,
So Keon White, obviously, both me and Eric have loved him ever since they
yep.
drafted him. Ever since he first came out with them,
I mean, he should have been a
this.
first round pick. I was shocked that he fell all the way to
Mhm.
the second round and fell to the Patriots. But again, that's why I have him as my Patriots defensive MVP of the year. So
Mhm.
after week one, that looks like a good pick. We'll see if that
Yeah.
continues.
Yeah,
But
he was an absolute beast. And then Jonathan Jones is someone I've always just loved
yeah,
because he's a really hard worker. He's extremely fast. He's always dependable. He's reliable. He's someone that you can throw him anywhere and he'll succeed.
yep.
So he's usually a slot corner, but then
He's the
they end up
perfect
throwing him
Patriot.
as a boundary corner. He's played some safety. He'll do anything you need him to do. And he's not big, but he plays bigger than he actually is. And I just ever since he would shut down Tyreek Hill, it's just nothing that he can't do, I feel like.
Yeah,
And he had some really impactful plays, especially that fourth down stop, but he was just all over the field,
yeah.
playing fast, playing hard. He's just like one of my prototypical Patriots that I like.
Yeah.
Um,
He plays like he's 6'1", but he's 5'9".
yeah. But other than that, I think they did a really good job. I think the one thing that's going to be interesting to see, and we didn't see much of this with the Bengals, is our team's going to try and attack by running against the Patriots. And is this something we're going to get into the Seattle game?
Yeah.
But they really lack up front with their depth in the line, and we didn't really see that much in this game about them trying to covertly attack it, not covertly, it's even overtly attack it. But that's one because you have Joe Burrow. But sometimes you have to say, even though I have Joe Burrow, we need to try and run the ball. So it'll
Yep.
be interesting to see how teams do it going forward, just because they don't have that much depth up there. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what that looks like.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know we're going to get into it in a little bit, but I think Seattle is going to be a really big challenge both for the
Mhm.
Patriots offense and defensively. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they perform in that game.
Yep. And then one last thing, special teams. You gotta give yourself a shit out, shout out. To Sly, the kicker. That's just the one other thing that was different than last year is that he made every one of his kicks,
Yeah.
and Ryland, I think he technically made like 70 something percent, but it felt
I,
like
I I don't think it was that
was it
high.
even lower than that?
I thought it was like 59%.
I
Let
was
me
gonna
double check.
say it felt like 50-50 whenever he was going out there. So, credit
He
to
was
Sly.
16 of 25, which is I think 62.5%.
Okay.
64%.
Okay, but Sly ended up making all of his kicks. I wasn't like too excited when they signed Sly. I was hoping they were gonna get someone else, Matt Araiza or someone else.
Matarese is a punter.
I know, but he kicks still.
Yeah,
Um,
he does, but he's not an NFL kicker. He was good. He was very good at SCSU,
mhm.
but he was a much better punter.
Yeah. Or even drafting someone, or undrafted, getting one of the undrafted people, just because Sly didn't have a great field goal kicking percentage last year either.
Yep.
But the other thing with kickers is you have no idea. It's a complete crapshoot where like
Yeah.
look at Nick Folk. He was
Yep.
historically a bad kicker. And then all of a sudden he
He
comes to
wasn't
the
historically a
Patriots.
bad kicker. He used to be a very good kicker early
And
on in
then,
his career.
but then he was bad after that.
He was bad
So
with Tampa.
he's bad with Tampa. He was bad with
He was
there's
a
another team
multiple-time
too.
Pro Bowler with I think multiple different teams.
And then he ends up going to the Patriots and he becomes, I think, most statistically, I think the best kicker.
Yeah.
Like for like completion percentage. So
Yep.
you never know what'll happen. I do like that Sly is jacked out of his mind.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that goes forward. Is he able to keep it up? But just give him credit because it's not easy to make that many in a row. So and they're gonna
Yep.
be relying on him a ton this year.
Yep.
All right. Three up, three down. I think we have exactly the same
Different
for all
order,
of this.
but same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got Mondre, Keon, and Sly. So again, Mondre, they wouldn't have won the game without him. He was fantastic in this. Helped me win my fantasy league as well for first week. Keon, like I said, he absolutely beast 2.5 sacks. It'll be interesting to see how he's going to do continuing throughout the year. A little different than Judon and just how he attacks the passer. Um, Keon, we didn't really talk too much about how he does it. He's just a physical kind of pass rusher, and he's not really he doesn't have all of that kind of like shiftiness that a lot of pass
That like
rushers have
Uche has.
that Uche has,
Yeah.
or even Judon, or you look at like Nick Bosa,
Yeah.
someone like that, where they're getting under someone and they're shifting, all that sort of thing. Because Keon just drives past someone. So
And not only that too, he's fast.
yeah,
Like
he's really
there's
fast.
clips in college where he's covering a halfback wheel route and he's in perfect coverage the entire time. Someone 300 pounds should not be able to keep up with a
Mhm.
running back.
Yeah, and I remember there was a play last year when he was in the backfield and then chased down like the running, I think it was the
Yep.
running back or a screen, when he was like
Across the
five
other side of
yards.
the field.
Yeah, like he's insanely fast for his size.
Yeah.
And then against Sly making all those kicks was really necessary. You want to just give your quick
Yeah,
thoughts?
I had Keon first just because pass rush was one of the not really big question marks, but for a defense that did really well last year, losing Judon, losing Barmore, that was probably the biggest question mark on the team this year. And it was going to be interesting to see where they were going to get that production from. Was Keon going to take that step up this year? Was Uche going to be like he was a couple years ago when he had double-digit sacks? And then Jennings as well, was he going to contribute? And then it was great to see Keon just having such a big impact. And they're going to probably have to rely on him going forward the rest of the year to get pressure to help give the secondary some take some pressure off of them. But if he keeps playing like he did, defense will still have some good shots in games going forward.
Mhm.
Then Mondre, like you said, he looked like the Mondre in 2022 that was carrying this team. And then Sly, I know they weren't tough kicks; they were all less than 40 yards. But still, that's something that wasn't a give me last year. So I have to give credit where credit's due.
All right, three down. So I've got Chucks, Lowe, and Marco Wilson. So again, Chucks 3 for 6 for pressures allowed, which is insanely bad. Lowe, again, he was better than Chucks, but he still allowed a decent amount of pressures, and that left side was where they were coming from. You could tell they had everyone lined up on the left side, knowing it was the weakest side, and they
Yeah.
always had a constant pressure coming from the left side. And then Marco Wilson. It was tough to really get a third. He just stood out as one of the guys in the secondary that just didn't really kind of lock down, and he allowed some catches. Uh, but again, he was kind of a last kind of throwing one there for that.
Yeah, no, I agreed. I had Chucks just because she was horrendous, and then Low. And then my third was Layden Robinson's pass protection, just
Okay.
because he was great run blocking, but he has to be more well-rounded at this level, especially for a team that needs. They're going to be running the ball, but a lot of times they're going to have to pass, especially later in the game if they're down. So he has to get better at that. Again, it's only week one, but that was just my third one. It was tough to pick a third one too, but.
Yep. All right. And before we move on to the Seahawks kind of preview, I got one kind of. Usually we do 5 questions around the league. I'm gonna
Oh,
ask
there's
just.
one more thing I want to talk about the game though before
Yep.
we move on. Is I know the Patriots won. They won 16-10 against what should be a good Bengals team. I know they were without Higgins. Chase didn't really practice much. And I know it seemed like they were in control for most of the game, but there were a few things that just keep in mind, so you kind of temper expectations from a big week one win. They got the win, which is the most important thing, but if a couple plays didn't go their way, they likely would have lost. The Bengals fumble at the half-yard line. If he just didn't fumble the ball, that would have been first down and on the half-yard line, and then they would have gotten eventually, most likely a touchdown. And then it's 17-16 and the Bengals win. So that one play potentially cost them the game. Also, the fumble on the punt return set up a Patriots field goal. If they didn't get that fumble, it's 13-10. If the Bengals convert on third down or on fourth down, on 4th and 2, if Jonathan Jones doesn't have a hell of a play, that's a first down, and that's likely a Bengals field goal considering they have a really good kicker. So again, that the Patriots won 16-10. It could have easily been 23-13 where they lost. So a win is a win, but just to keep those things in mind, it's also a good sign that a team is getting good breaks, but you can't always count on that week in, week out. So you have to hope that they play better next week if they want to have a chance to win.
Yep. But one other thing to go from there is that we did mention also last week where one of the things for like our record prediction, which I was mentioning, was that last year they got pretty much no breaks at all,
Yeah.
and they ended up losing all of those one
And they
score
didn't get
games.
breaks the year before either, if we're going to
Hmm.
be honest, in
Yeah,
2022. They should have made the playoffs, but everything went not their way.
yeah.
So two
And
years in a row that
historically, when
yeah.
those things happen, you usually see the swing the next year. So now it's been 2 years in a row of happening. It may end up being. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some more breaks happen this way that you're not usually used to seeing, just because things have a way of evening themselves out. So
Yeah.
that's just another thing. So before we get to Seahawks, we usually do 5 questions around the league. I'm just gonna do one this week.
Okay.
Is actually it's gonna be a two-parter.
All right. I have no idea what this is because this isn't
Yeah.
on our agenda. So
Is Russell
just
Wilson
like
cook? Not Russell Wilson. Is Kirk Cousins cooked? And then when will Michael Penix Jr. start his first game for a benched Kirk Cousins?
that's a great question. it's tough to say he's cooked. I know he didn't look great week one, but it could also be he just hasn't fully recovered. Achilles
Hmm.
injuries, especially for quarterback, are very tough.
Hmm.
So it's tough to say his career is over. But considering he looked like that week one, I wouldn't be shocked if they shut him down because of the contract they gave him, how they still have owe him a ton for next year. And then after that, it gets a little better on the salary cap. But if he keeps looking like this the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, I wouldn't be shocked if they just shut him down or put him on IR with an injury, and then they play Penix and see how Penix does. So I don't think they'll outright bench him. I think they'll say it's an injury. But yeah, he didn't look great, and it just makes you wonder what the hell are they doing? And I'm kind of glad Bill didn't go there because like we talked about this in the offseason, but if you want to draft Michael Penix number 8, complete like go ahead. I'm one of the as we talked about, I love Michael Penix, big Michael Penix fan, but you either draft Michael Penix 8 and use your free agency money to improve the rest of the team, or you sign Kirk Cousins and you use that number 8 pick on probably a defensive player, the best defensive player in the draft. You don't use both on a quarterback, especially the most pro-ready quarterback in the draft. You could argue maybe Bo Nix because he had more starts, but Michael Penix is a 6-year senior, was a 6-year starter in college. So again, I'm just glad Bill didn't go there after everything that's going on, and I'm glad that the Falcons lost week one, and I hope they lose more as the season goes on.
It's just interesting. I don't know if did you see any of the videos that showed every drop back
I didn't
that
I
Kirk
didn't watch
Cousins had?
those. I saw some of the highlights from the game, but
Okay. Yeah, there was one that specifically is focused on his feet, and you could tell he was putting no kind of major pressure on his back foot. So it'd be interesting. I don't remember if we talked about this last week or if it's just something that I've talked with someone else about. But usually Achilles injuries, it's not like an ACL. It's not something where someone's recovered in 4 to 6 months now. It's
yeah,
usually a year and a half,
yeah,
sometimes 2 years. And sometimes some people never recover from them at all. They're a really different kind of animal of an injury.
yeah.
And especially if he's put using all of his weight on that foot to kind of push off.
And he's
Again,
an
it's
older
not some,
quarterback too. He's already
yeah.
36, so it's not like he's a 22, 23-year old.
Hmm. So he got hurt, what was it, November, I think last
I
year?
believe so.
Is it October, November? He's not even at the year point yet.
Yeah,
So we may, as the season progresses, we may see him be more comfortable. He'll start stretching out more. It won't be
yeah,
as tight. He'll be able to push off more. It was not a great look. Again, I wouldn't be surprised too if we saw some IR thing if it continues and it doesn't get any better. Um, I don't think it'll be an outright benching just because I don't think they monetarily would want to eat that much money.
yeah,
I think it would just be a really bad look.
yeah. Agreed.
But maybe they would because realistically, he's only guaranteed the first 2 years.
Yeah.
So you could just say, I'll eat $50 million for 1 year, and just have him either be benched or cut,
Well,
and
with
then
the
have Penix start.
signings and contracts that they've given out, they don't have a ton of cap space next year too. So if you do that, you're kind of screwed. But again,
Well, yeah,
you
but
can
you'll
always
just
push money,
you're
but
he's gonna be on your books anyway.
yeah,
So just cut him, and you still have
it's just a
your
waste, is
quarterback.
what I
Yeah,
mean.
it's just
But
a waste. Yeah, but so yeah, it'll be interesting. One other quick question before we move on to the Seahawks,
yep.
and I think we'll revisit this halfway through the year and then at the end of the year.
Okay.
Where's Bill Belichick coaching next year?
Everything says Dallas for me, just because whenever you hear him on any of the shows he's on, I don't know if you saw the latest Coach GM episode with Underdog. He was raving about how Steve Jones has done an excellent job putting the team together in Dallas. And all the other shows, he's talking about how Dallas has great weapons, great offense, great defense. So unless McCarthy wins the Super Bowl, I'm still thinking Dallas.
I know this one's been really tough. I know Edelman the other day was saying he thinks it's gonna be the Giants, which I just even though Bill loves the Giants, I just don't think
They're
he'd
not in the
go there.
position to win.
They're not in position to win. It's gonna be a waste of his time. He's not gonna look good
Yeah,
unless he knew who was gonna play quarterback for him and then somehow turn that around really quickly.
yeah,
Um, it's really between um the Eagles and the Cowboys, I would say.
And
And
I'd
you
say the
could,
Eagles are more likely to go with a younger Vrabel, to be honest.
yeah.
But
So,
he has talked well. He's talked very well about the Eagles front offense, Eagles team,
mhm.
and they supposedly have a good relationship.
Yeah, and
But he could
he's
also be
been
doing
raving
that to,
about
yeah,
Harry Roseman the whole time too.
yeah.
So, it'll be interesting to kind of see which one. My prediction, this is really tough. My gut says the Cowboys. My heart says the Eagles because it's just a better team. So like,
I don't know. Jalen Hurts hasn't looked great the last 8, 9 weeks that he's played.
mhm,
You could argue that Bill can get the best out of Dak in the playoffs by him just being a game manager.
mhm.
And with the offense, assuming they re-sign Parsons, you could argue they're a
He would
better
want to
team.
go there so that way he has the next LT. Like,
Yeah.
um, I know. Yeah, I think my my mind says Dallas, my heart says the Eagles.
I just hope he gets one of the two.
I just hope he gets one. And then the other kind of question is, would Bill ever consider going back to Cleveland? Because if
It's a
Deshaun
different
Watson doesn't,
organization,
no,
but it's
he
this.
doesn't think that way though.
I know.
He doesn't hate the Ravens.
I know.
He he
He
hates the
hates the city of
Browns.
Cleveland. I think it depends on what he thinks of Deshaun. Because likely if Stefanski's getting fired, it's because Deshaun Watson sucks this year. And if he sucks after it's been what 5 years since he played
Mhm.
well. So if Deshaun Watson's still the quarterback, which he likely will be because of the cap situation,
What if he gets voided?
then what are you going to do at quarterback? I think
I don't
that's a question.
know.
If
Hmm.
he's able to get Miller Moss or Sanders or someone in the draft, then
Yeah.
maybe. But yeah, I think it's going to depend on where the Browns finish and what the viable options are. So
Yeah.
I'd say less likely just because he hates the city of Cleveland and then also the
Mhm.
quarterback situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the only other one would be the Bengals, where like it
Yeah,
sounded
could
like I don't know if you heard the GM shuffle with Mike Lombardi, but he was basically calling for Zach Taylor to be fired after not being prepared for the game.
yeah,
So interesting to see if he's trying to do that to try and help Bill out to have just
could be.
another option.
Yeah.
So maybe that may be an unknown place,
And
but
in the he was also in I think November or December before the playoffs, he was also calling for LaFleur to possibly be fired too
yeah.
before they upset Dallas. But
So it'll be interesting to see that. But I
yeah,
would love to have a friend that good as Michael Barty that
yeah,
holds my water that much. So
same here.
all right, Seahawks, real quick here because we've been going long for this. The biggest thing that they have a new coach. They don't have Pete Carroll anymore. They have Mike McDonald, former Ravens defensive coordinator for the last 2 years.
Yep.
And for at least the first week, and again, we don't really know much until about week 4, week 5, what these teams are really going to look like. And
Yeah.
hell, the Patriots in 2017 was the Ram? No, 2018.
2018 was the Rams.
2018.
You didn't know until
Um,
the
you didn't really
second
know
to
what they
last week of
were
the
until yeah,
season.
the second to last week of the season. But um, most teams you really know after week 4, week 5. But it looks like the offense has changed. Of course it changed because they ended up he didn't retain their offensive coordinator, even though the offense last year was actually really good. They were, I think, sixth and
They were efficient, but they weren't
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. But statistically wise, they
Yeah.
were up there in the offense. I think they were a top six scoring team, or there's six in DVOA, one of those two. Um, and they have a lot of playmakers on offense.
Yeah.
They ended up going with the offensive coordinator from University of Washington, um, and he's put in a lot of the different things that they did in Washington. They're a lot more run heavy. They do a lot more shot put, so that they do
Shotgun.
have some of those chunk plays. What was that?
Yeah. Did you say you said shot put? Did you mean shotgun?
No, it's like shot like they
Oh,
go
okay,
for like a
okay,
long play.
okay.
Shotgun as well. And but we don't really see a lot of yardage attempts for each kind of attempt. So
Yeah.
last week Geno Smith was I think 16 in overall kind of yardage per attempt. So it was a lot less than it was last year. But again, is that just week one being
Yeah.
conservative? Is it how they're going to be playing? You don't really know. But odds are if the coordinator is going to go with what he knows, probably, and it's going to be maybe more run heavy than it was last year.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's going to be a fascinating matchup for the Patriots defense, which played really well week one,
mhm.
to go against this offense. I know Geno Smith, I don't think any of us really think he's great quarterback. He's been good the past couple of years, but not great. He's been efficient
He's
though.
that average guy
Yeah.
that can get you someplace, get you to the playoffs. He's never going to put you over the top,
Yep.
but if you surround him with enough, he could be that game manager that would make you win.
Exactly. But the Seahawks have a great running attack with Walker. I know missed practice yesterday. I'm not sure if he's going to be playing this week. I'm assuming he will be until we hear otherwise. And they also have Charbonnet as well. And then in the passing game, they have DK Metcalf. They have Tyler uh, Lockett.
Lock it, not
Lockett.
Locker.
Yeah,
I misspelled
that's what I
that.
thought. You spelled it wrong. JSN, the Ohio State wide receiver. And then they also have Noah Fant out of the tight end position. So they have a lot of weapons on offense. Uh, Patriots last week, they held the Bengals offense to not much production. But again, they were without T. Higgins. They were essentially with a shell of Jamar Chase just because he didn't play. Bengals didn't have, they got rid of Joe Mixon. So they didn't have as much to really defend. Now you're going to have probably, my guess is Gonzo on Metcalf just because of the size. Because Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones can't cover someone that's 6'4", that's 7 inches,
Mhm.
8 inches taller than them. And then it's going to be interesting to see how's Jonathan Jones going to be against a very good Tyler Lockett or JSN and the vice versa with Marcus Jones. Who's going to be covering Noah Fant? Is it going to be Peppers? Peppers is only 5'11", 5'10", whereas Fant's 6'4", 6'5". I know Fant's underproduced. He's underachieved in the NFL so far, but he's still a good tight end, not like an elite, but he's still good. So it's going to be a very good matchup for Patriots defense versus this offense, and should be a good measuring stick. Is this still the same defense as last year? I know they're not facing an elite quarterback, but still a good quarterback. Is this still an elite defense? How are they going to go from week to week where they haven't faced this offense? You can't use a game plan that you used 2 years ago. You're going to have to game plan on your own for this whole week. So I'm very interested to see how that goes down.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's the thing that's I'm interested over the next probably 4 to 5 weeks is
Yeah.
with his defense is how is it going to play teams that they haven't really played much of against. Again, the Dolphins come here week five, they play them all the time. Pretty easy to know what
Yeah.
you're supposed to do there. But with them, again, some of the things is that they're facing teams that they're also familiar with.
Yeah.
So
But the
so
49ers in 2 weeks
49ers are another one where you haven't faced them. A lot of teams struggle
and a
against
ton of
them.
weapons there too.
So, are you going to be able to hold up? That's the biggest kind of measuring stick, I would say, for this team. Again, you don't have a quarterback that's, I think, fantastic, but he's a really good game manager
Yeah.
there. So, what is it going to look like? And are you going to be able to stop the run?
Yeah.
I think, the other big question is, they're going to be running at you. We think Seattle's probably going to be running at you. We know the 49ers are going to try and run it down your throat. And are you going to be able to hold up? It's going to be really interesting and see. So again, we
And
should.
to the Seattle last week, they ran a lot just because the Broncos' run defense isn't good and
Mhm.
their pass defense is better. So they just did what they had to do to win. This week's going to be interesting to see, do they try and attack that Patriots secondary, or do they try and run it, or do they try and do a mix of both? If they do attack the secondary, is it going to be trying to go at Gonzalez with Metcalf? Just because Metcalf is such a has the height advantage, or are they going to go with some of the other positions as well? Where
Mhm.
is Marcus Jones able to cover JSN? Is
Mhm.
Jonathan Jones able to cover Lockett, who's a good cornerback? I know Jones did great last week, Jonathan Jones, but should be interesting week to week,
Yep.
depending on
And
the
then just
matchup.
another kind of caveat to mention on their offense is that their right tackle spot is in a pretty kind of dire situation.
Yep.
Their starting tackle is out on pup right now. Their current starter was injured last week. Um, and we don't know if he's going to be able to play this week is questionable so far. So they might be down to their third tackle right now.
Big Keon
Um,
White week.
It could, yeah, it could be a big key on White Week. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of game plan that. And again, their inside kind of guards aren't the greatest, at least on the right side. I think Lakin Thomason's actually pretty decent on the left, but that right side is going to have some issues. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of game plan that. Their defense again last year was really their defense was the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. Their offense performed really well. It was just their defense. I think it was like ranked like 28th or something like that. Um, this week, not this week, last week in week one, they ended again. Mike McDonald is the new head coach, so defensive minded head coach. Um,
And he led
they
some very
were
good Ravens defenses over the past
yes,
couple of years.
and they have a
And
lot
he
of
is young though. So these are the two youngest coaches in the NFL, 37-year-old Mayo versus 38-year-old McDonald, or vice versa. But
Mhm. Yeah, and he was known in with the Ravens to have a lot of different kind of pressure packages where there'd be faking one thing, showing another. They schemed up pressure really well there, and they did that last week. They logged the second highest pressure rate in week one, and they led the NFL in defense of DVOA last year. So big change from the year before. So how they played last week. So are they going to be able to keep it up? Two
it,
defensive minded coaches kind of go together. I think they're going to be kind of having the same type of game plan where it's going to be defense, run the ball,
yeah.
and then using the passes complementary. So I'll be interested to see how they kind of go against each other.
Yeah, and this is another one where Mike McDonald with the Ravens faced Alex Van Pelt twice a year the last few years. So he
Hmm.
knows Alex Van Pelt's offense. Again, it's with a different team, but still the
Hmm.
same offense. So he should, you would think, have some plans ready of how he plans on attacking that, especially seeing what the Patriots did in week one.
Hmm.
Patriots ran the ball very well, especially running to the right side. I'm assuming he's going to have some plan to try and force them to go left. And if he does, are the Patriots going to be able to actually do it?
Yep. All right. So prediction time. Patriots are not favored in this game. They are +3. Over under is 30.5. Um, I think this game is they realistically have a chance to win this game. I
They
think
do.
they realistically have a chance to actually start this year. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but they do have a chance of starting this year 3-0.
Yep.
Because the Jets, I just will never believe in them until I see something out of them. And
And they
again,
played
last
terrible week one.
they played terrible week one. It doesn't seem like Rodgers is just fully checked in now. It kind of seems like again he was missing practice because he was on vacation, and it doesn't seem there's a lot of like inner turmoil you hear like reports of. So there is a chance they win this game. There's a chance they end up winning the next game afterwards. Um, I'm not going to take them winning this game because I just think that it I want to see how another team game plans them, knowing what they're going to do. They know they're
Yeah.
going to have to run the ball. They know that they weren't great passing the ball last week. And are you going to be able to continue playing like that? I just don't think you can. And I don't think they're going to continue getting break after break every single week. So I have the Patriots losing 17-13. And even the 13 may be high. It may be like 17-10, if anything, if they even score a touchdown.
Yeah.
Um, but I do not have them win the game, and I don't have them covering the spread either.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, I think they can also start the season 3-0, possibly even 4-1, depending on that Miami game.
Hmm.
Because depends on how Miami does. I still don't fully buy into them. I could see them dipping more this year, but I have the Seahawks winning 20-6. I had it 20-10, but about 10 seconds ago, I changed it to 20-6. Just because with McDaniel knowing Alex Van Pelt, also with seeing what the Patriots did in week one, which wasn't much offensively besides running the ball, I have a feeling he's going to try and force them to run left. And I don't know if that's something they can do. And I just think the playmakers for Seattle is just going to be too much where their offense is going to be able to score some points. Just the Patriots offense isn't going to be able to score any. And unless they get some turnovers, I don't see them getting any this game, and then that's why I have the score 20-6.
All right.
So under the Patriots losing and then not going, I'm hammering the under.
All right. All right. Well, we'll be in attendance for a home opener.
Yep.
Hoping there's a flyover for that. It's gonna be
Yeah.
really nice weather. So,
My first Patriots
um,
game is since before the pandemic, since the fateful day of January 4th, 2020, Tom Brady's last game as a Patriot.
first Gillette game,
Yeah, Gillette
back
game, sorry.
because
I,
you
I
were
meant
at
the Chargers game in 2021 and then the Raiders game last year, which was awful.
was it the Raiders game last year or the year
Yeah,
before?
last year. If,
Wasn't that
if I
two
was at
years
the
ago?
Raiders game 2 years ago, I might have not come home.
All right. So that's all we got. We may or may not be back next week just because it's a short week. Depending on timing wise, Eric's gonna be traveling. So I don't know if we'll be able to get an episode up or not. I may try and do one solo. We'll see how that goes. But if not, we'll be back after the Jets game. If we're not back next week, to kind of recap that game and what happened again, the Seahawks game. There. So again, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Pat's from Hello Pod. And make sure you hammer that like and subscribe button. YouTube, Rumble, all those other platforms. So thank you very much, and talk to you guys next time.